What's up, War Room? Welcome back. Combine week, recording this before CR heads over to another trip
Back
to the
on a
scouting
plane.
combine. Back on a
Just
plane,
got
never
off
not in a
one.
plane. This is the off season, baby. And we recorded the pod, but we got a couple of very draft specific questions, which the perfectest timing. Perfect timing, CR, because the scouting combine, despite all the leaks and the rumors and all the veteran stuff we discussed in the pod, it's really about the NFL draft. And why don't you just start off by saying, because I got this question this week, why it is important to be there in person and get face to face interaction time while we keep sort of breaking the balls of our former head coach for not doing it. Why does it matter to be there in person?
Right. This isn't just a running bit as much as we do have our things that we like Barrios dropping the, touchdown against the Vikings that we just
Yes.
ruthlessly beat into the ground. I look at it. So from my lens, and I'll explain why it's important to a team lens, because there's a little bit of a crossover. Since I've been working for NBC, I'm really lucky that I'm one of our on-air people that gets to interview players. The NFL, this is an event, like I know the NFL takes heat for random things. This is a masterclass event by the NFL, the Combine. It is like so impressive how and it's a credit to the city of Indianapolis. They get players all these medical checks down to do media and interview with teams and athletic testing all crammed into this tight window. It's not like the wide receivers do this the whole week. Each position group does this really in 48 to 72 hours max. So, we get a really lucky opportunity that we get a ton of FaceTime individually with these prospects. And it's a lot of fun. You get to know these guys. For instance, I had Olu last year. I always stay Saturday, so I usually get all the top offensive linemen, which is the only group on Saturday for media. And it's a really unique opportunity to sit down with these guys, get to know them as individuals. For fans, a lot of NFL fans, it's the first time they get to know anything about them because they're not all college fans of that specific team. And how much media does an average college player do? Like, I'm not talking about Travis Hunter, who has a podcast, an average college player. So I look at that for me, that someone that's been watching these guys and writing these guys up and everything, it's an amazing opportunity to get to know these players and a little bit, it's a short amount of time, but how their brain ticks. And it's even cooler when you see them down the road at Radio Row and you get to know these guys through a couple year span. Or now I started Big Ten Media. I'm explaining all this because there's a human element to this, right? Where it's like any other kind of job interview or people you want to work with. You get to know people and what makes their brain kind of go and what makes them, how they operate and maybe ways they don't operate. Where NFL coaching staffs or staffs in general, but specifically coaching staffs, they jump into the scouting process so late, even if you didn't make the playoffs, that this is your shot to get in front of these guys and see how they respond to you. And a guy like Aaron Glenn, that is massive, where he's going to be very intense. He wants guys that kind of, bring the intensity that he does or think the way he does or can play into his scheme and ideas and his culture, and guys that want to win just as much. Like, they hate losing more than they love winning. So I think that matters so much. Where, I mean, like, are you going to Zoom interview hire an NFL player? That's, you know what I'm saying? That's kind of how I look at it. Like, imagine the millions of dollars and assets sunk into a human that you talk to on Zoom for a couple minutes. Maybe if it's, obviously a quarterback and stuff, maybe you went out to the pro day. Like, I know in the Jets, the Sam year, they were at all the quarterback pro days and all that kind of stuff. That's different. But yeah, this is human element kind of stuff. You learn so much about people. So that's just the human element of the combine, why it's so important. It's crazy that, not crazy that needs to be explained, but it's crazy to me that people think that wouldn't be a massive deal, because the kind of people you bring into your organization essentially establish what your organization is going to be. And I'm just not convinced you're doing a thorough job and doing everything you can by skipping the event that is the best opportunity to do the most volume in the shortest amount of time.
I think it's perfectly said. I feel like it's a no-brainer. There's no downside to going. What are you doing that's a better use of your time those days than being there and getting FaceTime with these guys, especially when as an organization, you've just kind of been wrong about the personality of some of these players. And I don't want to like nitpick on certain guys. I'll flag 3 mid-round receivers who we heard a ton about their character, why they were going to be great people in the building, all of whom have not worked out or did not work out and ended up getting traded.
Right.
So this has been a recurring problem. So take the extra days, do the conversation in person. What is the downside? We got a little somewhat real-time breaking news. We're recording this Sunday night from our guy, Zach. The Jets have hired Eric Cornan as their director of player performance. He spent time over the years working in sports science, including in roles for the Texans, Florida State, and University of Kentucky. I feel like a certain podcast has regularly been talking about building infrastructure in sports science, sports medicine, analytics, and this is a hire to that effect. So I'm not going to act like I know anything about Eric Corn. I will probably do some research on him this week. I am happy they are hiring for that specific role and happy to see Zach getting the news out there. So progress as they're sort of retooling some different parts of the front office and overall infrastructure where I think they could get a little more forward thinking. So happy to see that, and happy to see they're still tweaking and making additions as well. Like, this is not a finished product. I don't think we'll see the finished product or know what it is until like May or June. So good news here on War Room. All right. From Hudson Jet, instead of using 7 on Tet or 42 on Jaden Higgins, what do you think of waiting until the later rounds to draft a receiver with size, like Pat Bryant from Illinois or Nick Nash from San Jose State, or even Dante Thornton from Tennessee? I'm not going to act like I know enough about those 3 dudes, CR, so I'm going to throw it to you.
Yeah, so Pat was actually a guy I had a Big Ten media last year. Really, really liked him. Had a great season. Was a leader, broke out. He's got good size. He's a real perimeter wide receiver, but they did use him in the slot sometimes. So he plays inside and outside, can go up and win the football. Not great foot speed, tough player after the catch, can run through tackles. More of definitely a red zone presence, possession receiver to me. Nash is somebody who had a monster statistical season. I think when you look at it, for those 3 guys specifically, because you bring up size and the fact that they won't be drafted in the first 2 rounds, which I agree with. There's a reason for that, always. I know people are burnt out by, combine testing and stuff, but those guys have a lot to prove with foot speed at the combine. The NFL, I think I've said this before, but this War Room's the perfect format. One of the first, I've been taught a lot of scouting rules growing up, and with receivers, there's 2 simple rules that you'd use as a baseline. You either got to be able to run away from people just with God-given speed, or you have to be a refined route runner, separator. Like that was Stephon Diggs, right? A lot of people forget. I don't think Diggs was not slow. I want to make sure that was clear. I want to see what Diggs ran. Diggs ran a 4.46, that's pretty fast. But Diggs was an elite, like 10 out of 10 route runner, where that 4.46 is better than a unrefined route runner's 4.3 or 4.28 or whatever. So the thing is, like, I know people don't want to hear it, but if you can't run, you're going to be taken later like that, because that means you need to develop into a great route runner. And the reason somebody like Tet McMillan is going to go in the top 15 picks is because he moves differently at that size than most big receivers. Same for Jaden Higgins, who will go in the second round. Like, he moves differently, and he's got pretty good foot speed overall. So both of those guys have good foot speed for their size. So I know it's easy to default to that, but, once upon a time, people like myself thought Jason Brownlee can be that kind of discount. And there's a reason.
Our guy. I miss him.
Right. And he had great ball skills, contested catch situation. But when you can't run away from people at the NFL level, we're talking about this player needs to be a number 2 or 3 wide receiver.
Yeah.
We're not talking about like a 5 or 6 that can develop. The Jets' number 2 wide receiver today is Malachi Corley. So, and even the free agency class isn't, we talked about this on the pod, it's not great. So that's kind of I like the idea, and I love when people ask questions about like those are deeper cut prospects, but you don't want to be one Garrett Wilson injury away from, oh man, our 5th rounder is our number 1, and like we can't throw the ball. As you said, the Jermaine Curse era.
Yeah, Rashard Matthews and Jermaine Curse trotting out there.
It's just not that kind of league anymore. Like, look at any team that wins a couple games. They're just not doing that.
Underdog fantasy. We're into the offseason. Hockey, basketball, plenty of things to utilize. I was messing around, building some things around the Four Nations games, building some things around NBA. It's good to mix in some new sports while we catch our breath in the NFL. CR, what have you been messing around with an Underdog?
Trying to get these best ball drafts going before the NFL draft, which is, there's a little risk in that, and I like that a lot. But NBA and NHL this time of year is just phenomenal. I love playing the pick'em with shot totals. Honestly, the amount of combos I've had of shot totals and rebounds is a sickening life I live, but it's been a ton of fun with Underdog.
Make sure to tap in, use promo code Badlands for a deposit match today at Underdog Fantasy. Let me ask you about 2 random receiver things while we're talking about the position before we jump to a D-line question on the draft. Stephon Diggs is a free agent. Is that even a name worth calling, or is he cooked and you just don't want that kind of person around the team? I'm not saying he's a bad person. I'm just saying he's had some quarterback flare-ups. 2, is Malachi Corley a sunk cost, or is there something to be done with this guy, or is that like, this is like Jalen Saunders or Darius Stewart, Shaq Evans. Like, it's just wrong regime, wrong time. Like, it's not going to happen here. Like, I'll give my quick take before I throw it to you. I don't think the Jets should be in the Diggs business, but I feel like we're going to get asked about him a decent amount if he's lingering out there. I don't see it. If I'm going the veteran route, I'd maybe try to get Keenan Allen cheaper, like the heavy veteran route. I mean, like very cheap 1 year flyer. Does he still have it? I don't think Diggs would also come here either. I think he only wants to go to like Super Bowl contenders at this stage of his career. Right. And I don't think the Jets are going to be looked at as that for next year reasonably. With Corley, I was talking about this in the Discord. Like, I was excited when they took him. Like, I actually predicted they would take him. I liked the player in college. I didn't, think he was going to be the next Deebo Samuel like some did, but I liked the player. I feel like you like the player too. Like, they took him like in a reasonable spot to the draft guide. And I just feel like everything I saw in his rookie year and like heard was like, oh man, like this is probably actually the wrong pick. And it's not just dropping the football inside the 1 and then like sort of the like shrug your shoulder reaction to it. There was other minor stupid old man on my lawn things. Like I will find the play, but it was like 2nd and 14, and he caught a pass for 9 yards and got up and started pointing for a first down. Like, his field awareness was so bad. Like, he was 6 yards short of a first down and was like taking time to like loudly gesture. It's like, dude, like, you don't even know where you are on the field right now. What is going on? He looked completely clueless, bluntly, every rep that he was out there, which wasn't that many. So that could just be the Jets were horribly coached and they were a mess last year and he's really talented and like he'll figure it out. Or it could be, I don't know if this guy's really an NFL player. Where are you skewing with those 2 before we jump to a DL question?
He's not a sunk cost. He has talent. You needed a defined role for him that the Jets didn't know how to create. And the fact that they wouldn't put him on the field does tell me there might have been a maturity issue there or adjustment issue, which is kind of the same thing. Maturity doesn't always mean a guy's a punk. It also could mean a guy is not mentally ready for the demands of the NFL. So I think that he's not a sunk cost. He is a very role-defined player from manufactured touches where screens, jet sweeps, shallow crossers. Hopefully he can kind of get a slant route going in his bag because he is like very well built that he could take on contact. So yeah, it's just, they didn't have the right plan for him to contribute, and he's got to improve on his end as well. So I think, can he be a team's number 4, which matters in the NFL, by the way, and make some plays after the catch? I think so. With Diggs, so just a little, kind of history here. Mike Williams, the year he tore his ACL, was at the end of September, and we saw how long it took him to. I mean, he really didn't even get back to form.
Red line, Mike.
Diggs tore his ACL at the end of October. And Diggs has always been a better athlete, like lateral agility wise, than Mike Williams. But like, are you going to do that again. I don't need to personally. I don't need to at all. So that would just be my 2 cents. I wouldn't go down that road. I think Diggs goes to a team that can kind of deal with him ramping up in September, and the Jets need somebody like you said, Joe, that could just take on a decent role right away.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see how this receiver group comes together. I just think it's like wide open, and I kind of hope they have a move up their sleeve that we're not talking or thinking about that could bridge the gap for a year or two. All right, from David. I went to Michigan and have watched every snap of Kenneth Grant's career. I'm concerned about his motor and technique. His ceiling could be Chris Jenkins, but his floor is Javon Kinlaw.
I agree.
Connor, what do you think I'm missing?
Yeah, I don't. Kinlaw is an interesting one. Kinlaw had a lot of knee issues, but Kenneth Grant, it's very fair, especially obviously he's watched a lot of him. Grant, and I agree, there's like a Chris Jenkins feel on his best plays. I thought of that right away. Kenneth Grant's so frustrating. He's 340 pounds. He moves like he's 280. It's just insane. His best game this year, far and away, was against Ohio State in a game Michigan never should have won, and they bullied Ohio State around, who then went on to win the national championship. He was phenomenal against Ohio State. So you sit there and go, why doesn't this guy dominate week in and week out? And he doesn't. He doesn't dominate week in and week out. He's got really good strength at the point of attack to two gap when he needs to. He has movement skills that he can actually rush for a 340-pound nose tackle, but it's just not consistent. I have my notes for Grant. I'll just rip through them quick, and then we can move on to the next question. But I agree. Like, when you hear a very athletic 340-pound nose tackle that played on a national championship team 2 years ago, and was obviously a really good player, you'd think, like, why is this guy not in the top 8 to 10 picks of every mock draft? He's so talented that he'll still go in the top 20. But I put, true nose tackle, shade nose size, experience, and production. Best game in 2024 was against Ohio State. He knocked down 8 passes over the last 2 seasons. He really brings the beef in the middle of a defensive line, holds the point of attack against double teams, like I said. Sneaky swim move over lunging guards. There's a clip of him in 2023 chasing down running back Keatron Allen that he's just got insane sprint speed at his size, but his pad level runs really high at times against the run, and that's when he loses leverage. He runs so cold as a pass rusher at times. There was the first 3 games of the season, he had 1 pressure combined. Like, he didn't factor into rushing the passer to start the first month of the season, basically. I wrote he just should dominate more, and he simply doesn't enough. So maybe the NFL will turn on the green light where this guy is literally like Chris Jenkins, or maybe he's just a hot and cold player, but he's just so talented and big, he'll be drafted that way. Good take by that question.
Yeah, I hope the Jets double dip at D-line in the draft, and I feel like they probably will. I just want to see a whole new room around Quinn and JJ, Will McDonald, and maybe Leonard Taylor, but beyond that, start fresh. Like, just start over, spot 4 through 9, and build it up. All right, last one from A-Rod13. I'd love to hear your reaction and Jason Fitzgerald take that the roster is so barren it might not be worth to try to build around Sauce and Garrett because they'll be on their way out of their prime by the time we're ready to compete. I especially wanted to hear both of your reactions because you guys have been very much through the season, off season, champions of building and putting around the 2 players and using them as foundational pieces. It would be very depressing if Jason was right on this. Jared, GW is the most exciting Jet since Revis in my mind. So I don't know if Jason was like that directly firm on it, but I do think he did sort of generally kind of make that point and raise that question that are the timelines ever going to sync up? And Jason's been at this even a bit longer than we have, so I get some of the like pessimism about burnout of this happening because he's seen it even more than we have, which is why we like having him on the pod.
He has a good feel for the Jets organization. Just keep that in mind. Like,
yes,
he knows business as well as anybody that covers the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you have to be telling yourself in the building, like, teams turn it around quicker. And like this thought that it has to be a 3 to 5 year rebuild because we missed the playoffs 14 years in a row is not true. Like, we've seen teams flip it around in a year or two if they do a couple things right. And we believe we can do that. We still have these guys cost controlled for a couple of years. There are cornerstones. We're going to publicly and privately make it known there are cornerstones, and money talks, and we're going to have them be the face of our franchises on each side of the football. There's no reason that we don't think that we can be about a 500 team this year and then make the playoffs in year 2. That's the goal. And we want them to be front and center when we break this playoff drought. If it happens, we sneak in this year, or it happens 2 years from now. And look, you are bad and you rebuild to get young guys like Sauce and like Garrett to build around and to build fans around and to be the face of your franchise. If you're constantly, just turning these dudes over and like working on these hypothetical 4 to 5 year timelines, like it's never going to work and you're always going to be on the treadmill. There's the Jets. It's not like Garrett and Sauce have been here for 7 years. They've been here for 3 years and they were young when they were drafted. Like their primes are going to stretch the next 4 to 6 years, maybe longer for Garrett because of the position he plays. Garrett's already 13th in franchise receiving yards for the Jets. He's been here for 3 seasons. Don't do what the Giants did and make yourself look like absolute idiots in losing Saquon Barkley and then watch him immediately go win a Super Bowl with your division rival where everyone could see the train coming down the tracks that this was an idiotic move. And how many young Giant fans had Saquon Barkley jerseys? Boo-hoo, I feel so bad for you. And had to go watch him win a Super Bowl with the Eagles. And plenty of, I know what Gen Z sport fans do now. They're like, I'm a Saquon fan. I'm not a Giants fan anymore. I don't care about the Giants because they're terrible. And I forgot when they won a Super Bowl in 2011. You don't want to have that happen with some of your young stars. So I think the Jets are going to pay Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson is going to be here. I've said that pretty consistently. I'm less confident about Sauce, but I do ultimately think they will pay him and he will be here too. And that's my prediction for these dudes before we wrap.
You did the really good math here. Sauce turns 25 at the end of training camp this year. Garrett turns 25 right around the beginning of training camp. So this is their real age 25 seasons. They will be 25 the entire season and next offseason. Do we think Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji look at the Jets and go, 3 years from now, we're still going to be bad? When these guys are...
they won't have a job if that's the case.
When these guys are 27?
Yeah.
We do live in this world of just like press the reset button all the time. And I think it's a couple different reasons why. I think one, in the NBA, guys have all the leverage and just demand out and they get out. And in baseball, so many of the teams, owners, even though they're not, cry poor and don't spend any money, that they look at their asset and go, this guy's 26, he's going to be a free agent in 2 years. Let's trade him now and recoup a ton of young players and do this all again because we're not going to go ever buy any players. The NFL just doesn't work like that. If you have a 24 or 25-year-old stud at a position, there's no reason to move on from him because you have to operate like you're going to be good in 3 years or you're fired. The job turnover is insane. So that's what it comes down to, where the simple answer for me is absolutely not. And the second part is that's more Garrett focused, is that there's going to be a young quarterback playing here in the next 2. Maybe it'll be Cam Ward this year. Who the hell knows? If not, maybe a quarterback from the next class. You need an established bona fide number one wide receiver for that quarterback. That's Garrett Wilson. Do we really want to be like, hey, we got a first rounder for Garrett Wilson this year that's picked 19. Let's see if someone could be Garrett Wilson again. So just, it's the hardest of, like, keeping these two guys is the baseline easiest decision, in my opinion, that you could make.
I concur. And a perfect way to conclude War Room. We recorded this Sunday night. It's dropping Wednesday morning. If for whatever reason Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji come out and guarantee they're going 17-0 and make immediate news, we'll have an emergency pod. But Connor, Paul, Dan, Will all be on the ground in Indy. So make sure you're following along for content. Make sure you look out for the finale of Streets of Fire on Friday with Dan Hansis, and another week of content before the league year hits. Live show. Listen to Sunday Coffee. I kind of gave the rundown there, but we're sold out of tickets. We're going to open up some more soon after I go to Printer Alley tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you soon.